Hello, everyone. Welcome to MaMa LiveTalks. Today, we have another conversation for you. This program began at the beginning of quarantine and the beginning of the pandemic, and we thank MaMa very much for allowing us to continue having these conversations today. So today's conversation, we're very excited to follow choreographer and filmmaker Stefanie Batten Bland. Oh, Chris, there's an echo. Can you hear that? Okay, so we are following filmmaker and choreographer. Welcome, Stefanie. We're going to be talking about how she's been moving through the pandemic with her company and her commission, and in her new role as casting and movement director for Immersive Productions to question casting biases. Welcome. How are you, Stefanie?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a treat. I consider you all a part of home, and it means a lot.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you here. And I think this is a really wonderful topic that we're going to be discussing. And you have brought two of your collaborators here. We're really excited to have Rena Butler. You can go ahead and come out, Rena. Welcome.
Hi, what's up?
Good to see you. And we also have Malik Washington. Welcome, Malik. Thank you all three for being here. So how's everybody doing? Do you want to do a little brief introduction, Malik and Rena, a little bit about who you are, how you became connected to Stefanie and to MaMa?
Please, Queen, go ahead.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Rena Butler. I am a choreographer and a dance artist. Steph, I feel like we go way back, but like officially met just in passing. But I've followed Stefanie since, oh my gosh, since I first saw D-Man in the Waters, actually. I'm like, oh my God, who's the girl with the fluffy hair? Like, who that? And you know, like representation matters so much when you're young and like 14, 15 years old. And so I think you've just been at the forefront as one of those pillars for me as an African-American woman, and knowing that there is a place. So I think it started all those years ago, 15 plus years ago. Yeah, super cool.
Wonderful. That's a great introduction. And Malik?
Hi, my name is Malik Washington. I am a dancer, choreographer, and teaching artist from the Bronx, New York, born and bred. And I met Stefanie at Sleep No More, actually. I was the first African-American male that they hired. And Stefanie, basically, she gave me the rundown. She was giving me all the information that I needed. And she was an amazing shoulder, ear, for all the situations that might be good or bad in those situations in those times. And she was a big help, a great friend and a mentor while I was there. So I was so appreciative of her and her guidance and her light. And as Rena said, representation matters. So when I went to go see the show, I followed Stefanie, and I ran after her as she was Bald Witch. And I was like, so what Rena was feeling 15 years ago, I was feeling almost just 4 years ago, and I was in awe because I was just watching her and I was just like, wait, what? Hold on, I want to do this. And because I saw her do it, I knew it was possible for me to do it. So thank you always, Steph.
Another incredible introduction. And Stefanie, I feel like you need no introduction now because that was a beautiful tribute to you and the work that you do. So well, I'll do it. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I think when I think of conversations and how we bring people together, this is exactly why when you all extended the invitation that I was thinking about these two, because we intersect in such completely different and at the same time home kind of ways, right? So I mean, and Rena's on my diagonal, so I'm going to go like this for when I do Rena. But you know, to me, like we go back to the large postmodernist aesthetic and company experience, and then when I came back to the States, I get to meet back up with someone like Malik through a physical theater and immersive theater aesthetic. And all of these worlds so completely collide and are the reasons why I do what I do and how I do them, and why dance theater and why film are the mediums from which I think stories can be told in really successful ways. And I couldn't think of anyone better really to kind of talk about really our stories of right now, right? And I'm thinking about the fact that I'm surrounded by so much light right now, and how I think in light of what has occurred and what COVID has obliged us all to see, that I couldn't think of two better individuals to help speak about illumination and speak about experiences, perhaps pre-COVID, as well as what is COVID is offering us the opportunity to do, which is to see clearer and with more pointed focus, and maybe connect lines and back to a dance visual, connect diagonals, so that we can move forward, right? And that we can move from spotlight to spotlight, and to move away from tokenism as broader representation and conversations that allow us to dream differently. And I think that's what we're all kind of doing right now. We're saying that not everyone's been able to dream the same way. And I think all three of us are navigating things in really unique ways. And I do know that Rena as well as Malik have a 7 p.m. engagement that they cannot miss.
So let's get into it. You gave a
There you
lovely
go.
introduction, Stefanie. And I love that. I definitely feel really lovely energy here in this Zoom, this virtual space. So let's go back to a year ago, right? And talk about before COVID hit. You know, we were not living in a perfect world by any means. So would you like to sort of start talking about some of your experiences before COVID, about what it was like working in the entertainment industry and all the different facets that you've worked in?
Absolutely. I think I might go last, if that's okay, team, so that we can hear as much from you all, right? I think that's really a good thing.
Yeah, I'll just, whoever wants to go first, Malik or Rena. Rena, just talk a little bit about what your experiences were like before, you know, the pandemic.
You around. That's what we're about to do right now, team.
I love it. I love it. Before, you know, obviously our industry has changed in a lot of big ways, but sort of set the scene for what you felt it was looking like and feeling like before that happened.
Wow, it's really interesting because I think there's so many different layers to it. And it depends on what spaces you find yourself in. I have had such a beautiful, luscious career thus far. I've danced with Kyle Abraham and Bill T. Jones, both Black choreographers, single choreographic companies. I don't even know if that's the proper term, but I'm making it up. It is today. And then from Bill T. Jones, I went to Hubbard Street, which was drastically different. Not only are you talking about a single choreographer company to a rep company, we are also talking about a rep company that's been predominantly white for 20 plus years. Since Linda Denise Fisher-Harrell, who was just made artistic director, since her occupation as a dancer there, yes, let's give her her flowers, because that is really a big step for Hubbard Street. And that's when it really hit me. I think, you know, I had challenges with Bill and my time there, but I do have a sort of appreciation for that, being a part of that company at such a young age, developing what a thick skin is and feels like to kind of navigate this industry. But primarily with Hubbard, it was a big shock. Just because I was one of the tokens. I think I was me and another Black woman who went by Minga Prather. She and I had a time. It was certain things like, we don't have the proper color undergarments for you for your costume, yet everyone else does. It was certain things like, well, what are we going to do with your hair? I'm like, what do you mean, what are we gonna do? I'm gonna put it up for the performance, just like Jacqueline, just like Susie Q over here, you know? And so I really feel like, I really don't mean to shade like that. It was not, I see you, Malik.
Completely fine. Shade is welcome.
It's little, the idiosyncrasies of that, or the little microaggressions that really throw you for a loop and make you feel crazy. And yeah, that was pre-pandemic, and me being a bit younger, a year younger, which makes all the difference, because I feel like 2020 has aged the hell up out of me. But it really feels, I know, it really makes you feel crazy. It does, and I don't really know another word that could properly like pinpoint the feeling of constantly being othered. And you know, my decision to move back to New York and join Gibney Company, beautiful organization, was so that I didn't feel othered anymore. I could just be myself and flourish and make mistakes and not feel guilty about them, repurpose them, reshape them, and be in a space where I feel comforted by everyone else that's also holding their own and sharing their own at the same time. And where was I? I was in Milan, Italy, at the epicenter of the virus. I was on tour with Hubbard Street at the time, and we were all over Germany in the nude saunas, doing lavender baths and everything, all the while this pandemic is happening. And on the news, I'm like, what's that? Because you know I'm in here steaming. And it just really, it hit. And I remember sitting next to a model who had come from Milan Fashion Week, and she had the masks and she had the gloves and the goggles. And I'm looking at her like, is it really that serious? She's like, oh girl, you don't know? So, you know, in our tour, our whole Italian tour had gotten canceled, and we came back and we were preparing for an evening an evening of Ohad Naharin's work. And we were ready to go. We were doing a dress rehearsal, and our director came on stage and said, it ain't happening. Everything is shut down, go home. And we'll let you know when we're back into the studio. And here we are a year later. I've switched companies. I'm in a space now where, you know, the after effect really feels like, I think Gibney has been mindful from get-go. And to be able to see how they really opened the space, I think, you know, in light of 2020 and the re-up of the Black Lives Matter movement, you can see that Gibney kind of took their bucket of things and threw it all on the table and was like, okay, how do we remodel? How do we restructure? And we're talking about an organization that's already in the practice of inclusivity and equity. And so it was really awesome for the expansion of the company and me being a new member, and then making space for me not only to be a dance artist, regardless of what my race and gender is, but also a choreographic resident for the company and a choreographic associate. So
amazing. Yeah. That was a great account. I'd also like to second that I think Gibney really, under a lot of pressure, took real count of the community and used their resources to, you know, take tally of what was going on and what people were going through, especially in the early months of the pandemic. And with that, I'd also love to hear from Maleek about where were you, what were you feeling, and what were some of your pre-pandemic experiences? Do you see similarities with what Rena said?
I was actually in a totally different boat. Rena is my best friend. So she's my sister. So when she was going through a lot of this, I was in a different place. The place that I was in before where she was when I was at Sleep No More, which was almost 3 or 4 years ago. And I left the show because I got a staph infection from someone else that had staph in the building. And I ended up in a hospital for 2 weeks. And I was broken, beaten, battered. But after that, through you know the good graces of the man upstairs, I was healed after not dancing for 6 months. And I had to like retrain my body all over again. And I was gifted something that I always wanted, and it was the opportunity to work with Camille Brown. I've worked with Rena, Kyle Abraham, and had opportunities to do something like Sleep No More and be the first African American male. And then the transition, I was being prepared for what was going to happen next. So I
Oh,
had
you
this
froze for a
incredible
second,
experience of
Malik.
education.
You
And
froze
then
for a second. If you want to go back, we last heard what's going to happen next. That's the last thing we heard from you.
right. So what was going to happen next was that I joined Camille Brown. Oh, can you still see me?
Yeah, we heard Camille Brown. Sorry, it's a
I joined.
little glitchy, but we can definitely hear your
Perfect.
voice. So just keep going.
It's the Wi-Fi. It's okay. I joined Camille, and I was introduced from Kyle and the education that I got from Sleep No More, and connect those two to actually tell stories of the Black experience. And we finished our year of tours. And I had no work for the rest of the year. But lucky enough, Gibney, Dance Wave,
Sorry, it froze just a little bit again. I'm
college,
sorry.
all the people in the Oh my God.
It's fine.
No,
No, but we have gotten an idea because like you were just talking about how Givney and Dance Wave have been giving you opportunities. And I'm really glad to hear that. Not only that in the middle of a pandemic, you're getting opportunities to perform still, which I know so many artists are looking to do, but also that you're both sort of finding companies that are embracing you in ways that previously companies had not. And I was wondering, Rena, just to go back to you for a second, when you had that experience of being tokenized at some of those early companies, was it a shock to you? Did it was it a surprise? Was it against your expectations? And did you feel like you sort of had tools to do your work as an artist while also coping with that environment?
Interesting, because I think it's a bit of both. It's, again, very layered. So I really felt I wasn't surprised because of the way society views me when they see me and the way they treat me when they see me before I open my mouth when they see me. So I think I was met with open arms, and I don't think that the company knew how much information I had already gathered from being in previous companies, particularly speaking about Hubbard Street. And what I mean by that is when I was onboarded as an employee, it was, oh, first time in a dance company, like, let's show you the ropes. And I'm like, I think I'm about mid-career. Like, I've been through the thing, I've been, on tour. And so it was, I think, surprising for them to know that not only am I a seasoned artist, but I also am very articulate. And I think the biases that they were projecting onto me was so difficult for people to swallow. Just because I would show up and speak at a panel discussion, or I can speak about my work once I was appointed choreographic fellow. And I think it really irritated people to see a woman thriving in her hometown, and I had to do it. I think the challenges that I was faced with, I think it was really motivating to know that my family was there regardless, and I had support still in New York, regardless of all the challenges I was feeling. Malik was at the premiere. I remember my first piece on Hubbard Street. He surprised me, and I was standing there actually having just had dealt with a racist donor who wouldn't shake my hand and let me know that he wouldn't shake it because he just was not comfortable, I guess, with me. And I was on the verge of tears, and I remember Malik was like, "Hey, friend." I'm like, "Oh my God, where did you come from?" And had surprised me in the most beautiful way. And so, with all of that, there will be that. I think when, as artists, we find safe spaces in the studio, or we find a safe haven to really be ourselves when we're most vulnerable in a dance studio. And so it's a nice hideaway from society. But when it meets, that kind of dissonance meets you in the studio, that's when it's really challenging. You have to just kind of navigate day by day the things,
especially when trust is so important, right, in dance making. And I wanted to open it up to both of you as well, because one of the things we've always discussed on Live Talks is when the Black Lives Matter movement began, it began a while ago, but this summer when it was especially visible, I was wondering, what did you feel your role as an artist was in those conversations? Because you're an artist, you're also African American. So what was your response in that moment?
Keep doing the work that you were doing. In my head, I said, everyone is catching up to what you were already doing, especially with the people I was doing it with. So now everyone was looking for us. They're like, we need inclusivity. Oh my God, who can we get? Let's get Malik. Let's get him on the panel. Let's get Camille A. Brown. Let's get, Rena Butler. Let's get Stefanie Batten Bland. And I felt like, again, I was becoming a token to help you to tell people that you weren't racist or that you didn't have any just like fears or like, it's interesting because every time I am told that people see me, sometimes they have to search for me. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
like
completely.
they're always telling you that they see you, they hear you, but then they don't see you for like 2 years. And then when something like this happens, they're searching for you, going through their Rolodex to make sure that they still have your contact so that they can get you on the line to have a conversation so that you can propel them forward to get more grants, to make sure that people don't leave their organizations. And it's something that Stefanie said earlier, and I totally agree.
Stefanie, do you have anything to say on this as well? Do you have something that you would like to add? Because I know you also have many experiences with this as well.
Absolutely. I think I'll start back to the year ago marker, because the year ago marker, we were to get on airplanes and were to head off to a festival in Richmond. And I think the first thing that occurred was the French team, because my company does work with the American and European counterparts, and together we make this really interesting whole. And the understanding from a phone call from my mom that she, who has always been the person that helps me with touring childcare, which is something we'll cycle to a little bit later about parent artists. She called and she got on the train, and I had just dropped Philomene off at school, and I was talking with her as she was on the train, and there was something in her voice, and I can't really say more than I understood that she shouldn't be on that train. And it's a train that comes up from Virginia. It goes through DC. Lots of folks take this train. We know it well. And I remember very distinctly saying, "Mom, get off the train. Get off the train." And it really clearly kind of changed everything for us. And as I look at my life and as I look at the spaces that I have navigated through, and I understand that I am someone that does make bridges into different places. And it's something that I think I do well. It's something that I think our work does well. And as I saw the exodus of the city out, and we're like past the fear and past the initial complete depression phase, right? I was lucky enough to go join my mom down on this little farm, and lucky enough to be able to walk around without a mask regularly, and the children as well, which kind of opened us into a way of being, which suddenly I saw the pivoting of different orgs, right? So, you know, the minute the UN and the United Nations started pivoting into their European Day, and knowing that they still wanted to move forward with physicality as the means of performance to celebrate European Day, and that they still wanted us to move forward with it as the creators, knowing that we've already been using these platforms. Lots of people have already been using these platforms out of necessity, right? Out of access, out of what it enables people to do, from different class, popularities and demographics. And to realize that we were able to, through different time zones and different screens and different boxes, still exist in performance, made me realize that we have a future through this. I already have a long existing dance cinema practice, I'll say. And so knowing that we would be able to use the camera as opposed to a capturing mode, but really let it come into conversation and have a performative identity as we all do within it, was going to be our way out. And that if hopefully the presenting orgs, and as many of them did, they found their digital season titling and wording, and they shifted, canceled tourings into these ways. And that was clearly that was a very positive thing to come out of this. I'm also seeing within it, but I mean, besides the fact that now Rena and Malik have like shifted to the sides of my screen, so I'll go like this now. Very much they're people that I'm constantly trying to hire in various ways. Gina, I hope you're not watching, and Camille, we can talk about it later. But it's this kind of thing where as you want to reach out to people, because Malik kind of hit it on the head, we sort of know what we are representing, but just because we know what we are representing and what we are fulfilling doesn't mean we're not doing it from a place of truth. And I do believe that shows and spaces right now are really kind of realizing that they do need to behave differently. And I say behavior because that's all it is. These are just behaviors. They're behaviors that we've learned and that we've decided to uphold and continue to support different apparatuses, but we don't have to. And so in light of that, I think that what's unique right now is I'll go back to this light metaphor that I started with earlier, because I am still here. I am healthy. My people are healthy. They may be very scattered and in states that I'm not so happy with, right? And I wish I could do more for them, but they're here. And if I'm here, I know that it's because I can tell our stories in such a way, and I mean right? All of our soil, so that we can just better walk on it, right? And I think the best way that we can walk on it is just being frank that the system wasn't really ever made for more than a supporting role idea, except that folks stepped out, and they stepped out of the caste system, as we always do, as models always do, and we have excelled. So it's now saying, how do we now invite all of these stories into our histories and into our present tenses, because that's the only way we can walk forward together. And I think that's what these two can do. And that's
lovely. I wanted to ask, because it is, I agree with you completely. And I wanted to say, just before, we have about 3 minutes before you two go, do you have anything to respond with what Stefanie just said? Because I thought it was really lovely.
Behavior, that rang so many bells in my ear. Just the idea that the behavior of certain people, and I've seen people switch their behaviors or try to adapt out of fear. Especially seeing like a lot of stuff. I had to get off of social media for a while just for the idea that most people were putting up black boxes. But in my head, I was doing a countdown of how long are you going to be this person before you go back to who you were. And I called 2020 the year of consciousness, of you actually growing a conscious, because you had no distractions. You didn't have football, you didn't have basketball, you had no sports, you had none of these things. So now what were you looking at? Oh, all of these things that were going wrong, but they were going wrong for the years beforehand. So it's really powerful that the artwork that people like Stefanie creates, the artwork that people like Rena creates, and the artwork that I create, or Camille or Kyle, is really important to the stories that we need to see. I think that's why we see so many movies that topple box offices like Black Panther, because there are stories we have not seen, there are stories we have not heard, and they come from people that you have silenced for a very long time.
I mean, Malik just said it, so yeah, that was so beautifully put. And there's a mindfulness now in creation, which I saw a lack of pre-COVID. Now you look at everybody and they're finally conversing and dialoguing with world events. And so it's not just in an arm or a porter bra for a porter bra. It's like we're shielding the aura and yeah, exactly. It's purposeful, and I see that shift, and I'm hoping that it stays that way, because it's inspiring. And then to see, yeah, it's inspiring. I think when you get the call though, I've gotten a lot of calls in 2020. You know, we're really trying to diversify, and we need a Black choreographer. Can you make a Black Lives Matter piece? I'm like, okay, thank you so much for calling. This is all the time I have today. I see right through the bullshit, and let's call it what it is. And so I think in that mindfulness, like Malik had stated so clearly earlier, like, it is some of that is out of fear, and then some of that is out of truth. And it's learning to differentiate or navigate like what the difference is in between that. And I hope the fear is kind of overshadowed by the truth. Yeah.
That's a beautiful note, I think, for both of you to end on while I go in to talk with Stefanie. That was lovely. Thank you both for being here. It was such a pleasure to meet you both. And good luck tonight, or break legs, you
Thank
know?
you, Ryan, and thank you, Stefanie. Much appreciation.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I hope to see you all soon.
If I have anything to do with it, you will for sure.
Great, yeah. Well, Stefanie, it's just you and me now. I do have sort of like a first question for you that I'm really interested in hearing. That was really lovely to see you interact with both of them. I mean, it seems like you both, like all of you, have really lovely relationships with each other, and the things that they said about meeting you and what you've done for them. We talk a lot about intergenerational relationships in the arts at La Mama, and obviously, you know, you have been with La Mama, you have seen generations at La Mama, and I would love to know sort of what you've done for them. Who was it who did that for you? Who sort of like led you and gave you advice on dance shows, and who sort of like, you know, who was that for you, and when did that happen?
Yeah, I think of everything that Ellen Stewart is and what it's like to step into that, and to step into that building, to step into the American building, to step into the European building, right? And what she offers, and what Mia and Nikki and everyone there is allowing makers to do. My inspirations are funny because my parents are artists and were artists, and you know, kind of growing up in a really like strange loft kind of space in old Soho before it had capital letters and things like this is definitely an upbringing that made me understand that sound, space, people all act in independent and interdependent ways. And they just really exposed me to everything because it was just really kind of just a part of life, right? And then as the evictions occurred and came, and as Soho became capitalized, we all had to leave. And you know, it's amazing to think so many years later that I was able to come back and kind of make up a demographic that is still present. Perhaps it's in a different way, but to come back and to reconnect with childhood friends who also figured out a way to come back, and we want to be present here. And so then that means then finding the spaces that were there when I was little, you know, University Settlement, La Mama, what's going on with the Wooster Group? They're still there. You know, like, who's still here? While still, of course, embracing Skirball and like all of the new things that are going on as well, of course. But what, you know, Judson is still there. It might be peeling, but these places are still there, and they're still offering ideas. So I'd say that what touches me the most now is how I can bring stories back to spaces, because in that place we can find an entry for anyone. And I think that's really very important, as I'm seeing much more segregated box spaces being purported and celebrated. I want to make sure that the entry for anyone is respected, because that's really the only way that we'll be able to get to the everyone.
Wow, great answer. Thank you so much for elaborating on that. I also had another question about what we were talking about earlier, and this sort of goes into what you just said. You work internationally, right? Like, you've worked here in New York, you've worked in other parts of the country, and you've worked in Europe and many other places. Do you feel that there is sort of one way for that to happen, or is it going to be specific to country, specific to city, specific to venue, the ways that we create these entry points for all different types of people?
Yeah, I think especially now, it's actually just specific to people. There's great people and disgusting people everywhere. And the same amount of, you know, like Airbus, Boeings going back and forth are present. There is no longer an oh, hail this, you know, continent versus another. I think a person is pulled to a place because they understand that they're supposed to go there, and they're supposed to go there for as long as they're supposed to be there. And I know the fire of the States pulled me back, though I came back with the detailed determination and the supportive process making that Europe instilled in me, and the value systems of being a person, and how the authority of being a person that makes was instilled with me there, and then also then from my parents, right? So it's always been sort of this bridge. on both sides of the Atlantic. I'd say then also, I'm very curious to see how we all come back from this, because we have to be thinking about space. We have to be thinking about who feels comfortable coming, as well as we have to be thinking about how have these telephoning platforms enabled folks that really never would have attended live, and how they're being brought in. And so I think we're now looking at also another bridge that might unite the States and Europe and South America and Africa and Asia in different ways, but that might not be the same construct. The plane might not be necessary, but the career might still be just as great.
Yeah, and that's such an important point, because I think what was so beautiful was that Rena and Malik, they both said the first times they saw you, they were in the audience, you know, and I felt like that was really powerful, because we have been expanding our audiences through this technology. And for somebody, you know, for somebody to be able to see you or see one of them who's not even anywhere near here, you know, I think is so important. I would love to go ahead and jump into talking about your role as the casting and movement director for Immersive Productions, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Is there a way, can we do it? Can we, because since a lot of people are in this, can we show the trailer into it? Because a lot of those subjects will be a nice transition, and will be yummy food within it.
Yes, I love that. Chris, can we go ahead and...
Can we cue it up?
All right, and we're back here with Stefanie Batten Bland, and I'd like to remind everyone who's watching with us on Facebook that you can ask us any questions in the comments, and we'd be happy to ask Stefanie today. Stefanie, that was so gorgeous. We were just talking about everything we were seeing. Can you explain a little bit about what we just saw?
Absolutely, and I think it's a really lovely way to segue into what's going on with Immersive Productions, because it does have to do with who's present and who's being seen. So a lot of our work in company STD land and in what we like to call the birdland space, has to do with being able to tell stories, not just with people, but also with materials. So whether you were looking at gorgeous vegetation and movements that were full of extinguishments of life, which were really my ways of offering homage this past summer to those who were really just taken through police violence in particular, I really wanted to juxtapose that against the visual of lushly, beautifully, let's say, manicured spaces, right? And what that perfection means and how one is invited to sit in a space of reflection, and really counter that with an experience of deflation, of extinction, of arrestation, right? And from there, we kind of move into really my love with La Mama and what's been going on, and through Look Who's Coming to Dinner, which invites us, hopefully at one moment, to really take a seat at the table together, and to realize that actually quite often before we can get to the table, we have to get through the very simple barrier of the door. And that action of getting past that is one that is really greatly reduced to access, and the decision making upon who we let in and who we don't, and our behaviors around that. Oh, there I go with behaviors again. And which went back to like one of our great classics of Bienvenue, Welcome, which was also at La Mama, and again goes back to asking, how do we welcome people into our space, and what do we do, and how do we welcome people, and then I think from there, which I think needs to be my like little ad drop for this evening, is Colonial, which is the enormous production that was filmed during COVID in a bubbled environment within the Jerome Robbins Theater at Baryshnikov Art Center, that they backed, and that is for a May 3rd world premiere and streaming release and things like that. So I say all of that to go into what I think I do well in this world, which is bringing conversations and navigating the uncomfortable situations that many people find themselves in. And that has to do with who is seen and who isn't seen, and how can we go about seeing more clearly. Immersive Productions, the producers of Sleep No More, very much also, like many other productions, have come to their own reckoning with casting policies, and they took me on as casting director, and I, as well as movement director for a next project with a really beautiful directorial team. And we're examining, how do we think about casting? How do we think about casting someone as opposed to the visual that goes into our head when we're thinking about the leading man, the leading woman, and the visuals that those entail, right? How do we shift from that visual model and into a model of saying, I want to cast the best performance to defend that character so this narration can move forward? And that's really where my work is kind of centered at, and which is why I've been, bugging Malik and Rena so much, because it's a great opportunity to dive into what our biases and our stereotypes are, and how they're visually accompanied throughout casting history. I think we've all, as performers, walked into a casting office and seen visuals that might defend the author or the character narrative, but don't necessarily find anything that looks like yourself on those walls. And so a big part of my job is really making the casting experience something where we can find the best performer, regardless of who they are, regardless of their private life. And I make a real distinction between private and public in the States, because everything seems to get mushed together here. And I think it's very important that people have privacy in their lives, as well as whatever and however they engage in their public. And sometimes, of course, those are absolutely mixed together and interchanged. But I think it's important for the directorial teams and producers in general to see individuals coming into the room, and to let ourselves just dream and be taken on the ride that a performer is offering in an audition space. So I'm very excited about how we're moving forward in casting. I might be shooting myself in the foot, because I think so many of Company SBB's performers would do quite well in Immersive's work. And so I have to be very careful about that, because I'm not trying to suddenly not be able to tour my own work. But I do want people, right?
Great point. Yeah.
Right? And we do want people to have fantastic work. And as we are thinking of this, like, coming back better, right? well, we come back better by letting everybody have the same chance, right? What did Viola Davis say? You know, if the role isn't there, the role isn't there. Well, I think the roles are there, and it's just saying that the performers need the chance to audition for them.
I have a few questions. I mean, I love everything that you just said, but I'm wondering, you know, because these conversations have been going on in the arts, and I'm thinking, what do you say to people, number one, who have seen many generations try to tackle this, and they've seen generations try to say, we're going to change the entry, and there have been changes, but we still see where we're at today, right? What do you say to them? Like, what's going to make this different, you know?
I'm a part of it. I don't mean that in some pompous way. I think movements are repetitive for a reason, and I think we have to look at them within the context of the movement and the zeitgeist of the entire world at that moment, right? Things are moving forward in ways, and I stand on phenomenal shoulders to be where I am, to have the right to speak about children, to have the right to speak, to have my hair as wide as it is right now in this space that it is. If I call and celebrate Emily Johnson, you know, my land and their land and the land and ownership and language, all of this is absolutely tied to not letting the switch go off. And I think something that's quite unique is that the switch is on, and I know I will do my damnedest to make sure that it can't be turned off. And I think there is something unique about the movement this time. I think everyone sees it.
Do you also feel that when you start implementing these policies in your performances, that you see a difference in the audience, whether during the performance or the type of press that you get for the show, or even who is coming to see the show?
No, because I'm not doing anything different. I think the times have just caught up with what I'm doing. It's funny, there was a grant that was asking me this too. How have I pivoted, you know, all this language? And I was like, I haven't pivoted at all. I haven't done a damn thing different. I'm still making exactly what I'm making. I think you're just actually seeing financial value in it. So actually, maybe we should just address the fact that financially you're seeing that this can bring you benefit. And so if that's where we are, and if we're talking about finally that a larger system is seeing financial benefit within this, then we can get in and we can actually push and change structural designs, right? The pyramid can turn into circulars. And I think I think it's just a pleasure to actually be alive while I am still working, and to see that what I'm doing is no longer on the fringe.
I love that. That's lovely. I feel like you can go through LaMama's archive and find other artists who feel that same kind of joy. Do you know what I mean? Of like, they were doing, I have felt that walking through LaMama's archive of like, or every time I come to LaMama and I say, oh, I saw something incredible, they'll go, well, 1985, this person did this, 1978, I can't ever win. But I love it because I'm always learning about these kinds of performances and these performers, and I can tell my contemporaries about them as well. And I had one kind of last question for you just to wrap up. I was just wondering, through your experiences as a performer, and you say that you love bridging these different kind of communities together, why do you feel that art and art making has this unique role in sort of allowing people to question their biases or to change their perspectives?
Yeah, I guess that's quite personal because it's just actually how I was just brought up. It was used as the tool to explain life to me. Sound was used to explain sexuality to me. Fish were used to explain gender to me. So there's always been tools and writing and sounds and movement and ways of being that naturally complement growing up. So then that means to me that any civil society or any place that calls itself a civilization has to have a check and balance system, and there's a creative side that can influence an intellectual as well as vice versa, as well as them both being united, right? What it does mean to me also is that legacy is passed on to me through visual and tactile actions, storytelling actions, and that is inherently artistic. whether it's from food traditions down to clothing traditions to hair traditions. These are expressive manners. And expression is, to me, the best storytelling and then the best learning tool that's available to us, because then we can reflect upon it without noticing that we're reflecting upon it. And then that viscerally, right, kinetically has impact in us. Well, if we're sitting in that as an individual, then just imagine my intention towards someone else.
Wow, I'm so glad I asked you that. That was such a lovely answer. Well, Stefanie, do you have any final remarks or anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up for today?
I mean, kisses to you all. Thanks so much for having us. I know our managing director and my chair of our board would yell at me if I don't do a wonderful plug again. May 3rd, you can see more of what we're doing. Colonial
Yes.
will have its world premiere. But yeah, look out. I mean, I'm here to stay.
Oh, yes. And I will also say that we will put information about that performance also on La Mama's website and on our social media, so you can look out for that. And I believe your website is sbb.org, companysbb.org.
That's right. And then also, I do want to make a shout out to Montclair State University, where I'm also assistant professor and where I am also able to actively pass back down to folks who will come after me these gifts that I was given.
Well, I certainly appreciate being able to speak to you today, Stefanie. Always a big fan of you and your work. And so I feel very privileged to be able to have another one of these conversations today. So thank you for joining us. And thank you all who have tuned in today. And please tune in for more live talks. They'll be coming back at you for the rest of the spring and the summer. So thank you so much.
Yay.